Hey Emma,
Yes, Madelyn.
what did Naughty Dog say when Sony came to them for an idea about a new Jak and Daxter that's an open-world sandbox?
I don't know. What did they say?
That sounds like a hit, man! Hello, and welcome to Talk of This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
I wish I could export in audio form the faces you were making.
I was giving you silent laughter. It's going like, oh ho ho ho, but just making the face.
Yes, silent laughter translates really well in a podcast.
Yeah, well, the theme plays during that anyway, so.
You're right. That's fine, though. It would have been nice to hear you laughing.
Oh ho ho ho.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I'm your, fell into a pit of pus and turned into something else host Madelyn.
I'm your, tears of fish host Emma.
And thanks for tuning into the show. This week I got both the games into the joke, but in case you didn't catch it, we're going to be talking about Jak and Daxter and Hitman 3. I didn't get 3 in there.
That's fine.
That's a hit, man. 3.
3.
But two game series. One long dead. The other just recently published again. And perhaps taking a break.
It's at least the end of the trilogy.
Well, they've said that they're gonna give Agent 47 a break for a bit, is what they've said.
Good for him. He can go on vacation.
I think because IO is busy with James Bond, so they've got some other. I guess James Bond doesn't kill people, right? I don't know. Maybe he does.
I don't know. Does he?
I
feel like you could probably. I still feel like you could probably bring a lot of the Hitman mechanics over to a James Bond game.
I mean, that's obviously why. That's got to be why they're making the James Bond game.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're not there yet. Despite the fact that there are Hitman games that would qualify as old games for the show, I sort of didn't, in a Kingdom Hearts-esque twist, I was like, oh, Hitman, there are 3 of them. But there are 8.
Yes, there's 3 new ones.
Yes.
But it's a long-running series.
But we'll save that for the new game. And let's dive in to, I was going to say everyone's favorite PS2 platformer adventure type game with 2 protagonists. But it's not. Jak and Daxter.
Yes. It's the one with the weasel otter.
Yeah, the Otzel.
The Otzel, yes, that's what it is.
Yes, the Otzel, not the robot. So Jak and Daxter, which I will not refer to as Ratchet and Clank, despite Emma trying to goad me into doing it as we were setting up. Actually, the first game, they're all old enough to be old games, but the first game is actually called Jak and Daxter, The Precursor Legacy. So there is actually no game just called Jak and Daxter.
Oh, well. Oops.
I don't really understand why they felt like it had to have that subtitle. The subtitle's kind of dumb.
Subtitles are fun, man. You know? You throw in some fun subtitles for fun.
It just confused me. When I was buying it, I was like, oh, I hope Jak and Daxter The Precursor Legacy is the first game. It looks like it's the first game, but it's not called Jak and Daxter. Anyway. So it was released in 2001. It's among the early PlayStation 2 titles, developed by Naughty Dog, published by Sony. Right around the time Naughty Dog, like partway through development, was purchased by Sony.
Back when Naughty Dog was making animal-y themed video games.
Literally, what happened to Naughty Dog?
Well, that's actually a good... Jak and Daxter is a good sort of look at what happened to Naughty Dog, right?
That is actually true.
The first Jak and Daxter to Jak 2 is very much, you can see the shift in what Naughty Dog was interested in between those two games.
It's just wild. What really underlined that for me is that I was reading about the development. They were like, it was like, oh, they were working on Crash Team Racing, and they had a few people start working on Jak and Daxter, and I was like, man, bring back that Naughty Dog. I'm just kidding. I'm not a Naughty Dog hater other than their work culture, but I realize Crash Team Racing has gotten a reboot, but it's not by Naughty Dog. Where's the Naughty Dog that used to make the Crash games? What happened to them?
Yeah, on the topic of work culture, I did watch a video from the Jak and Daxter creators looking at, like, the new remaster. And, like, one of his last things was when he was talking about, like, leaving Naughty Dog. He was like, I could keep doing this thing I love, coming in 6-7 days a week. I was like, oh, well, okay. So that's the same as it was back then, I guess.
Yeah. This was not as front and center in the stuff that I was reading about Jak and Daxter, but you can read between the lines about the technical development of it that some people were putting in a lot of work. They also talked a bit about good stress and bad stress, and they were like, it was good stress. It's like, that's cool for you to say.
Yes, this was
baked in.
This was before I think it became a hot topic, the workplace things, and in general, not just in the video game industry, I think. So it's very, I think of the early 2000s as very much a being very proud of working a lot times. I don't know.
Anyway, let's talk about the game a little bit before I get into that.
Wait, first, okay, so I remember, from our personal history with the series, I remember playing Jak 2.
You know what, now that you say that, I do too. We definitely didn't own it. It was like a Blockbuster rental.
Was it, or were we borrowing, like, someone in high school's copy of it?
That doesn't sound as familiar to me, although the more I talk about it, the more I'm like, I can think of people who might... I have a hazy memory of someone being like, you should play Jak and Daxter. Or, like, having fond memories of Jak and Daxter.
So maybe that's getting combined. But I do remember at least something with Jak 2. And I have something that's almost definitely a false memory of playing Jak, just the first one, on the downstairs TV in Granddad's house. Which doesn't make sense, because that's not where the PS2 was. But somehow I have that memory, but I don't know if we played...
I was thinking we played Jak 2 at Grandma's.
I don't have any memory of that.
My brain is not... I look forward to Dad texting and being like, I don't know what you're talking about. To both of us.
We have some sort of history with the Jak series, we're pretty sure. Between, like, our 4 or 5 different memories, one of them has to be real.
One of them has a grain of truth.
Yeah. So that's our childhood history with Jak and Daxter.
Yeah, I was certainly aware of it.
Yeah.
My boyfriend was like, oh yeah, Jak and Daxter always seemed cool, but I was an Xbox kid. Because, topical, based on last week's episode, Jak and Daxter was and has always been a PlayStation exclusive. Has not ever appeared anywhere else.
Specifically in this video, this retrospective video I watched, they were talking about how at least the first game was very much like attempting to bring to PlayStation like a Nintendo style action platformer, like Mario 64, for instance. So it's console exclusive is interesting because they were like looking at Nintendo games and being like, okay, let's bring that to our game on PlayStation. Bring that Nintendo design ethos.
Definitely. So Jak and Daxter, it's a story-based platformer. The first one is like very much kind of a fantasy type world. Jak 2 and onward, as we might talk about a little bit, moves much more into the like steampunk. Wikipedia even dropped cyberpunk, and I was like, ooh, really? But much more into the kind of sci-fi world. But the first one is very much like fantasy island.
Yes. Jak also does not talk in the first one, sort of in keeping with that style of game, I guess, you know? Like, I think about, like, how, like, his precursor, Crash, doesn't talk, even though the other characters in that game do.
Yeah.
And like, Mario doesn't really talk, but there's people who talk in Mario games. Mario says, "Wee-hee!" You know, if that counts.
Thank you. I was waiting for you to do a Mario impression. No, it definitely, I mean, to me, it's the ears, really, but I was like, oh, this is very much like a Link style.
Oh, that's true, right. Legend of Zelda, yeah.
Yeah. But I was reading, too, they were talking about this. They were like, this was an on-purpose choice, because it was at this time where it was really big that you really wanted the character to really identify with the character. Did I say the character to identify with the character? The player, yeah. To identify with the character. And one of the designers, or someone on the team, was talking about how they were like, you know, okay, it's like, Daxter talks a ton. Daxter talks constantly with panache. But they were like, but you can hate Daxter, that's fine, that's not you. But if your character was talking constantly and cracking jokes, you might, you know, separate yourself. It's like, that's sort of an interesting... I feel like that's something that we are kind of moving away from, that the protagonist necessarily has to be silent or necessarily has to be you for there to be immersion. It's an interesting early 2000s bit of gospel.
I mean, he's also, like, what is his species called? Is there a name? I've got, like, Lombax in my head, but I think that's the Dr. Seuss book.
I'm not sure.
But he is, like, he's a furry, I guess. It's a furry game.
Perfect.
If you really think about it.
Really
no, he's like some sort of creature with really big ears and kind of, like, hairy, but also humanoid in that he has, like, hair on top of his head.
It's like if Crash Bandicoot had evolved a few steps.
Yeah. That being Daxter theoretically is also one of these creatures. But at, like, the beginning of the first game, he gets turned. What is the context of this? He gets turned into an
Right, so what happens? So I played the first couple of hours, actually, of Jak and Daxter in prep. I've played some of both games this week. Aren't you all proud of me?
Very.
Very prepared. So what happens is Jak and Daxter, they're on Misty Island, which is a place that their, like, you know, grandfather sage figure has told them not to be. But they're there, because they're teenage boys. And they run into this kind of evil-looking group, led by, who I think we eventually learn, are Gull and Maya Acheron. And they're instructing all these, like, evil-looking things to go out and steal precursor orbs. I keep trying to call them precursor eggs, and that's not right. Precursor orbs. And we later eventually find out they have this, like, big dark plan to unleash dark eco, which is, like, dark mana, dark energy, and corrupt everything and destroy the world and all that. But in the meantime, Jak and Daxter have stumbled on this evil meeting, and they're running away, but they're discovered by a guard, and Jak has also picked up one of the orbs. I don't know how he hasn't done this before. They're everywhere. But he's picked up one of these, like, precursor orb things. And it lit up. All fancy. It didn't do that for Daxter. And so he, like, throws it at the guard and it, like, explodes. And this is way more detailed than you wanted, right? But I'm gonna keep going. Daxter gets pushed backward into this pit of pus. I think it's dark eco, but whatever. And he comes out, and he's an Ottsel, part otter, part weasel, all wisecracking.
And he stays that way, is the thing that's interesting to me. It's just such a weird, like, plot point for him to not always be an Ottsel, but also, like, eventually become chill with being an Ottsel. You know?
I mean... But no, I think the Ottsel do later prove to be intelligent as well. So it'd be one thing if you wanted an animal sidekick, but not all of the animals talk, and you went way out of your way to justify that. But I don't think that's actually how things go down. So that's interesting.
He just finds his bliss as an Ottsel, you know?
I
sometimes think about, like, becoming a dog, you know? And that would be chill.
Don't say that after you just said this was a furry game.
Sorry. I don't mean it in a furry sense. I just mean it in a, I would like to, I look from where I'm working at my couch where my dog is just sleeping on the couch all day, and I'm like, man, that would be nice though.
Yeah. No, I don't know. I think there is some talk in the beginning of wanting to try to, like, I think the reason we're gathering all these eggs and stuff, eggs, oh my god, orbs. They look like eggs, okay?
Why do you keep trying to call them eggs?
I don't know. There was a quest early on where I helped someone push a giant egg off of a cliff.
Okay.
And I think that having seen the word egg, and then I looked at all these egg-shaped things, and I'm thinking about Cadbury eggs and stuff, I was just like, precursor eggs. But they're orbs. I think part of the reason we're trying to do this is to power up a ship so we can get back to the island and maybe try to turn Daxter back. But he does seem pretty chill about being an Ottsel overall.
Plus, like, just spoiler alert, he does not turn back.
No.
So even if the plan is to turn him back, it doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. He stays an Ottsel.
Anyway, Jak and Daxter, the Precursor Legacy, Jak and Daxter 1, does feel very, I mean, it feels very PS2, right? But in a charming way. In a, like you go to the pause menu and it shows you how many of the eggs of all the orbs.
They're just eggs now.
Genuinely scrambled my brain. How many of the orbs you've collected so far, and like your list of quests, and it shows you your total completion percentage and stuff. And like the whole game is just running around picking up these orbs and power cores for people and doing like little quests for the villagers. It's like, oh, this is charming in a PS2 kind of way.
Yeah, it's very much like a collectibles game.
Yeah.
Of which there were a lot back when the time this was coming out.
But yeah, I mean that is basically it. There's not that much combat. The combat in this one is very simple, and that you have a couple of different ways to throw punches. That's it. And there's also like the different colors of eco do different things for you. So like green eco is like health eco, blue eco. Those are the only two I've really encountered so far, other than obviously the dark eco pit that turned my friend into a small hamster-like thing. It's not really a hamster, like a ferret.
That would be so weird.
To be turned into a ferret? Yeah.
No, to have your friend turn into a ferret and then they just like sort of live on you.
You know, though, that's not unlike my relationship with my boyfriend. It is sort of like I mean, he's larger than I am, but there's like an animal that just is around. That is what living with a man is like. So it's probably not that different for Jak, really.
You heard it here first.
He's like 6 months behind on the podcast, so he'll hear this like next summer and be like, why did you say that? Anyway, yeah, the blue eco like makes you go faster and like attracts things to you and whatever. So it's very simple and relatively light, semi-humorous. Whenever you pick up a power core, Jak and Daxter do like a dope little pose, which also feels very PS2, that like it pauses to save whenever you do that, but also the poses they do are dope. I love when Daxter slam dunks the power core into my backpack.
Yeah.
And when he break dances on the ground.
Yeah.
It's like excellent. I also read an interview where they said Daxter was heavily inspired by Mushu from Mulan, which is like anything that's inspired by Mulan.
I also saw one where they said it also a Boo from Aladdin.
So they were just watching a lot of Disney.
They were just watching a lot of Disney. Which, to be fair, you can kind of see that in the first one, right? Like, Animal Sidekick, very Disney.
Very much part Abu, part Mushu, too. Like, pretty much spot on. But it's also nice, you know, it has the requisite fishing mini game, all the stuff you have to have in a good game. And there's not much consequence for dying. You just, like, go back to the beginning of the level. You don't even lose progress. So, overall, this one I might keep playing. I'm, like, enjoying it. It's quaint.
Yeah, the checkpoint system was like a big change from like Crash Bandicoot, for instance, where it's like, you died, get good, play the level again. But because Jak and Daxter doesn't really have levels, they have more checkpoints everywhere so that you don't die as much, so that you're not set back to like the beginning of an area.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah. So Jak and Daxter, super critically acclaimed. Rightfully so. I mean, obviously I'm playing the remaster, right? But the graphics at the time were really, really cutting edge. I mean, it's an early PS2 title, so take that as what it should mean, right?
Yeah.
But also, and this is really wild when you think about it, and this is the part of the development that I'm like, oh, Naughty Dog has always been this way. There are no load screens. Which actually genuinely surprised me when I was walking through the game. I was walking up to another area and the name of it came up and I was like, okay, I'm going to walk through and it's going to load. But you just go in. It doesn't load at all except for going from your save file into the game. Which for a 2001 highly complicated open world early PS2 game is kind of wild.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty cool.
And obviously, like, that's something that you don't even see necessarily in games now. But the way they talk about it, and obviously I'm not a programmer, but it's obvious that they're, like, duct taping stuff behind the scenes to avoid having to load things in a way that I'm sure is immensely complicated. And also in a way that I'm sure required much more cleverness than it would ever take now to do something like that.
Yeah. And then going into Jak 2, you can start seeing when Naughty Dog's sort of storytelling priorities shifted as well. It's rated T for teen. Imagine being like a 10-year-old that really liked Jak and Daxter. And then Jak 2 comes out and your mom's like, you're not a teen.
Well, you would have been 12 at that point.
That doesn't have teen in the name, Madelyn.
I realize it, but you'd only have to wait a year, and then you could play both Jak 2 and Jak 3.
Yeah, we don't have much time to go into Jak 2 and Jak 3, but in Jak 2, you're like teleported to another world or something.
So here's what happens in Jak 2. It's darker than that, Emma. It's darker than that. So Jak 2...
Well, I wasn't done yet.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. But it's not another world. It's 500 years in the future.
Oh, okay.
And
never
much
mind.
like how Daxter never turns back, you never get back.
Yeah. Yeah, you teleported 500 years in the future, kidnapped by some evil dude, tortured for like 2 years.
2 years! Cloud Strife style. Soldier program style.
When you're finally able to escape with Daxter's help, you have the new Dark Jak form. And you fight the government.
With guns.
With guns.
And you talk now.
Yeah, and you learn to talk. I think that's really funny. He doesn't start talking until you are transported. And then they're like, you're talking.
Yeah, everyone makes fun of it at least. The series has a sense of humor, if you hadn't picked that up.
Yes, yeah, we've said all these, like, dark things, but it doesn't mean that, like, it becomes, like, a joyless affair all at once. I would argue that even Naughty Dog's modern stuff aren't joyless affairs. But
they are games.
Yes.
But Jak 2 is actually one of the best reviewed PS2 games. It's also massively difficult, apparently. They go back to, like, an incredibly awful checkpoint system. Not awful, just incredibly challenging checkpoint system. But it's interesting as a series that was very, very... The first game was very successful, right?
Yeah.
And then they were like, we're going to make something that is entirely different. And was also very successful.
Grand Theft Auto rated teen, basically.
I mean, yes. But you can point at any game and be like, that game is just like this game.
I just say that because I remember specifically really, really bad at driving in Jak 2.
Yeah.
Because you can also drive.
Yeah, that becomes part of Jak 2 and Jak 3, and then they have Jak X, Combat Racing, which I guess is the Crash Team Racing of Jak games. The fourth game in the series has to be a racing game in the PlayStation PS2 era.
Exactly.
But they haven't made one. They haven't made another Jak. That was the last one Naughty Dog made, I think, Combat Racing in 2005. And then there were a couple of PSP ones that were not super well received. I even saw some stuff with, like, the Naughty Dog developers being like, we ended up having to outsource it, but, like, we wish we had done it because it was bad. Just like, yikes. But I don't know if it was because the Google knows that I'm thinking about this, but, like, there was just a bunch of stuff this week about how they're not making one now, but they wish they were. Which is like, folks, all you have to do is tell Sony to have another studio start it for you. And they will. We learned nothing from all the articles.
And then they'll pass it back to you eventually.
Yeah. Like, if you want to make the game, just to have somebody else get it started for you.
Just for the small sacrifice of a studio of people. You just put that on the altar of Jak and Daxter. Bring it into this world.
Jak and Daxter also gave us Neil Druckmann, so... who was an intern on Jak 3.
Wow. That's sure weird to think about.
Yeah.
And that's just not, like, how it... I can't picture that as, like, a career path anymore. And that wasn't even that long ago, I guess. But going from, like, intern at one company up to top dog at one company, no pun intended, that's really what the Naughty Dog title should be. Should be
top dog.
Yeah.
No, you know they would change the name of the studio if they could now. Naughty Dog is, like, too silly of a name.
I guess so. They've got their new, like, edgy way of, like, writing it, though. You know, it's, like, gritty.
Naughty,
even.
They did say in the interview that they're not making it, although they wish they were. So, like, watch for a Jak and Daxter reboot coming from some other studio. 2022.
Heard it here first.
Look, if the new Ratchet and Clank game does well, you know there'll be another Jak and Daxter.
Yeah.
So, here's your mission. Talk about Hitman 3.
Sure. Hitman 3 is the latest installment of the new Hitman trilogy. This World of Assassination trilogy. But it's the 8th installment in the Hitman series overall. It's developed, and this one is also published by IO Interactive. It is no longer owned by Square Enix. And in this game, you play as Agent 47, and you conclude his adventures. But mostly you run around sandbox levels, conducting assassinations with varying levels of factual competence.
And you can play this on whatever you want. Jak and Daxter, PS exclusive. Hitman 3 on Windows, both of the PlayStations, all of the Xboxes, Stadia, actually cloud streaming on Stadia and on Switch. Also PlayStation VR, which I don't understand how you could play this game in VR.
I watched a little bit of it. It did not seem pleasant.
There's just so much going on.
Speaking as someone who is, like, with a grain of salt, because I'm very easily motion sick, but it seemed motion sickness inducing to me.
Well, you just do so much moving around, and there's so much going... It just feels like this is going to be a dope game in VR. I was going to say in 10 years, but VR has been 10 years away for, like, 30 years, right?
I mean, for people who play VR regularly, I don't think the moving around is very much of a problem, because that's how all VR games work. It doesn't work with my brain. But that's how you move around in a lot of VR games, and people handle it.
I mean, I'm so inexperienced with VR that perhaps I am saying things that are stupid.
You don't actually walk around, you, like, click where you want to go.
Right, yeah. But to me, it's like, oh my gosh, all of this game is about stealth, and I don't... It's just a kind of game that's like, this seems like it would be an incredibly dope VR game when VR is really there, but it seems too complex.
Sure. I mean, I think it's probably a gimmick for this, but, like, you know, the Half-Life Alyx came out, so that's not that much more complicated than what this has going on.
For sure. So in this one, Agent 47, who, if you're not familiar with the series, is this, like, genetically engineered assassin. He's got 5 dads.
He's bald.
He's bald, he's got a tattoo
but
on the
can
back
look
of his
like
head.
anyone.
And you've got your buddy Diana, who's your handler, your mission briefer. At the end of Hitman 2, spoilers for Hitman 2, I guess. I was about to say, do you play Hitman for the story? But that's something we should talk about Hitman 3, I think.
Yep.
The end of Hitman 2, you and Diana have left ICA, which is International something association. I clearly don't play it for the story. I didn't bother to write down what the acronym was for.
It's fine.
And basically you're going to take down this, like, global shadow network called Providence. And you've teamed up with, like, another clone assassin mercenary, which is, like, wild that there's more than one. But I guess if there's one, it shouldn't be wild that there's more than one. And you two, the 2 clone assassins, are in this because, like, you're seeking revenge for them. Providence had some hand in you being created. But Diana has other motives.
Ooh.
But like Emma said, mostly you run around in these sandboxes and do funny murders.
Yeah. That's definitely been a point of contention with Hitman 3 with the fan response to it. Not in that, like, people aren't enjoying it or that the sandbox levels don't offer a lot of fun things to do. But the first 2 games very much let you ignore the story as much as you wanted, really.
Well, the first game came out super episodically, so even if you were invested in the story, you would lose it.
Yes. So yeah, Hitman 1 came out episodically, which was part of, I think they had it was very successful, but, like, weirdly successful because it was coming out episodically, and I think that's where the Square Enix relationship ended, just because it wasn't working.
Well, it seems like it got really sour even before that. In, like, 2012, Square Enix was like, you are going to make nothing but Hitman anymore.
Yeah, like, Absolution didn't do very well, and then they, like, restructured the studio and put them all to work on Hitman, is my understanding. But then IO Interactive bought themselves back with the Hitman license, and Hitman 2 came out all at the same time, I believe. Although all of these have, like, roadmaps of content. So, like, Hitman 3 just recently had, like, Kill the Easter Bunny. And there's always Kill Santa ones in the games. I think there's also, like, this weird, like, 7 Deadly Sins one where, like...
That's coming. That's, like, their upcoming DLC.
I think part of it is out. Like,
okay.
Some of the sins are out. That, like, puts separate challenges on you and missions. So, like... There's always updates, even when things come out all at once. They're always updating the thing. But yeah, 1 and 2 very much let you ignore the actual story. I think, 1 came out episodically, but once it was out, you could jump into any of the sandboxes in whatever order you wanted, I think. And Hitman 2, you do that as well. So that was very much about, like... funny assassinations or cool assassinations, you know? But then with Hitman 3, I guess they had, like, internal discussions and they decided they were actually kind of passionate about the story that they were telling. And so they decided to exert a little bit more control over the player. Like, you have to do the level. The first time you play, you have to do the levels in the correct order. And, like, a couple of them, they, like, the first time you play, they would, like, restrict your starting point, because sometimes you can pick where you want to start in a level. Or would restrict, like, this is your only exit point. Usually levels have various exit points so that you can get out after the assassination. And then the very last level is entirely linear, as opposed to the sandbox gameplay that the series has made itself known for. And this was very split reaction to this. Although the developers seem to have expected it and just say, like, we're happy with what we did and we kind of expected a divisive response to it, which I respect, you know? They decided they wanted to do this, and, like, they weren't, like, totally unaware of how people would take it after 2 games of very much not doing this.
It is interesting. And to be clear, Emma's referring to all this in the past tense. This game came out like 2.5, 3 months ago, so, like, the controversy is still live.
Sure. I guess.
I mean, not
controversies really last, like, all of 4 days now, so...
I mean, I hear you. I'm just saying, like, it will be interesting to see how history judges Hitman 3, I guess. Because right now, like, so they have a really generous free trial for Hitman 3, which I actually think is a really great, I think it works very well for this game. So I played through some of the tutorial level, I played through as much where Diana entirely, like, coached me through exactly how I was going to kill this guy and did it successfully. Although, man, I almost blew it at the end. So I couldn't figure out how to put my gun away. And then I just dropped it.
That works.
Anyway, I did get out. It was fine. But then as soon as she was like, okay, now you're going to go back and you can do it however you want, I was like, oh, but I don't know how to do it any other way. And so, of course, the whole point of Hitman, and the reason people like it, is that, you know, this one was a very small world, right? I was just assassinating someone on a yacht, so it's, like, not like there was that much to explore. But in most of these, like, big open sandboxes, the idea is you spend a bunch of time there, and you kind of learn how the world works, and then you plot your perfect assassination. Or if you're a dope speedrunner, you aim your shot right, and you shoot the guy, and it's been 10 seconds, and it's over.
Yeah. There is, like, generally, it's, like, there's a bunch of, like, story type missions. Like, you can hear something and it will set you on that assassination path, basically. So there's a bunch of, like, sort of preset ways you can, like, figure out how to kill a target. Or you can just, you know, chuck something at them and run.
Yeah.
It's really up to you.
Yeah, that's a lot of the stuff I was reading, and it makes it seem more appealing, is, there's this, like, mission stories.
Yes,
which I don't know
that's what it
is the site that it'll walk you through, and that if you're new to the game, that's probably the way to play it. Otherwise, it's gonna teach you a little bit more about what to watch for in the game.
Yeah. The mission stories aren't always as generally, like, someone's talking in your ear and telling you how to do it, but, like, you'll find something, like, you'll hear someone talking, and it'll like, put a little icon up in your thing, being like, look at this, and then you'll go to that, and do, like, look at this. So rather than, like, that, like, walking you through each step, it's like you've discovered a opportunity, and then you follow that opportunity, right? So, like, I think one of the levels that people really like in Hitman 3 is the mansion one, where there's a murder mystery going on. So, like, you can, this is, like, the most obvious route to take, because it's sort of like they're excited about it, and so they lay it out for you, right? So, but you can take the private detective's clothes at the gate and pretend to be the private detective and solve the murder mystery, and then report your findings to the person you're supposed to kill, and then kill them, you know, and that gets you access to them, as well as, like, the files you need or whatever, I think. So it's, like, a straightforward way to do that. But you still have to solve the murder mystery yourself. Like, it doesn't tell you how to do that.
That's funny.
Yeah. So it's stuff like that Not always as elaborate at that, but that's what sort of the mission stories are.
Totally. Anyway, I was not great at the game. I mean, that's probably no surprise to anyone. The problem is, of course, that, like, I got very fixated on, like, they give me all these, like, feats to do, like, these things. And one of them was in the one where she totally walked me through it. There was this guy who took, like, a secret meeting with my assassination target. And that's when I killed him. But one of the feats was to steal that guy's clothes and meet with him as the guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's dope! But, of course, I accidentally ended up getting a fist fight with him and got shot.
Yeah.
I wasn't willing to do the patience sport.
Sucks when that happens, you know?
Yeah. But anyway, I got a little bit lost in talking about the game. Talking about the game. I haven't been able to tell whether IO should be proud of what they did or not. Does that make sense? Like, on one hand, I'm like, that's super cool that now that you actually own the IP and the publisher's off your back, that you made the game you wanted to make. On the other hand, I can't tell if the story is actually good or not. From
you are
the
walking, like, technically it follows the other two stories, so in some ways you are walking into the third book in a trilogy.
Right. No,
is important to keep in mind.
The summary of it sounds interesting. I'm like, okay, there's interesting twists and turns here. They talk a lot about this game being about, like, free will. I'm like, okay, cool. That's, like, a cool way to take this series, I guess. It does raise, and I won't pretend I'm the first person to raise this question, it does raise the question of how much of a sympathetic backstory you really want for Agent 47. The man's an assassin.
Of bad people, though. You know?
Still, he doesn't have to just be assassin of bad people. You can just murder everyone.
Oh, sure, but that's just a game thing, you know? If we
Fair
got
enough.
hung up about our video game characters murdering everybody, we wouldn't be able to like anyone.
You're right. But it's interesting. I find from the outside the way that they play around with the game mechanics very exciting. And there are some that I'm just like, oh, that's straightforwardly cool. Like, I think the Berlin level also saw a lot of, at least critical interest in that. In that one, for the first time, you're dropped in without any kind of briefing or any kind of materials, and you have to figure it all out yourself. And I'm like, that's cool. That's, like, a really cool way to be like, here's the thing that you've been used to, and we're going to take that away from you. A chapter 13 kind of situation,
Sure.
if you will.
I don't know if that's a great comparison
but in
to
a
make.
cool way. And then when me, story game me, reads about the, like, linear final level, I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, good for you for, like, doing something kind of interesting with this. But all of that probably kind of falls apart if the story sucks. So, who knows?
Who knows? And that's a matter of perspective a bit, too, right?
That's true.
Some people will like it, some people won't like it.
In any case, despite that kind of, polarizing response to people who didn't get their 6th sandbox that they wanted, they want that sandbox. It wildly outsold the previous game. They recouped in, like, a week, apparently. So, laughing all the way to the bank.
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah.
There's also a secret ending that loops to the beginning of the first game, which, if you have an opportunity to do that in a video game, like, you have to take it, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
And you can play all of the other Hitman games in this game, which is cool and convenient if you own them.
That's fun. Yeah,
and it's, like, upgraded for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, this is the kind of game that I can look at from the outside and be like, I understand why this would be fun, but I don't think it's my game.
I watched a video on why the throwing feels good. So, that's the appeal of Hitman.
It did feel good when I threw my gun down by mistake. Absolutely. Yeah.
Throwing things at people. So the way that it works is there's a lock on, basically. If you have the circle...
Oh, yeah.
If you have the circle on a person, it'll hit them. There's not, like, an aim, basically. So, like, one example the developer give is, like, in the Santa levels, like, the thing Santa does is, like, teleport all over the map. but, like, if he's teleporting and say you have the circle on him and you chuck an orange at him, the orange will just go to where he's teleported and hit him. It's programmed to, if you have the circle, it hits them. So that's why there's, like, the videos of, like, some guy on a jet ski and, like, they throw something at him and it just follows him, you know?
That's so funny.
Because it is specifically programmed to, like, curve so that it'll hit even if, like, someone's run by where you're throwing, to make it... It's, like, it's lowering the difficulty barrier that I've said. Like, there's already so much going on that, like, we don't want to make it frustrating when you just, like, miss your throw. So, they've made it so that it just, like, you just have this auto-aim. But it does create some funny scenarios where you, like, throw an orange in, like, one direction and it goes, like, whoop!
That is the kind of design attitude that almost makes me feel like I could really enjoy this game. But I just don't think I have the patience for it. I just want Diana to walk me through tons and tons and tons of mad funny assassinations. That's all I want. I don't want to have to figure it out myself. That's a lot of work.
Sure.
So, shall we mash?
Let's mash him up.
Jak 4. Jak is an assassin. He has shaved his head.
He can be anyone. Nothing suspicious about Jak. No distinctive features.
Nope. Certainly
whatsoever.
not the creature on his shoulders.
I mean, you know, it already is like, how is Agent 47 doing this when he, like, puts on someone's clothes and, like, is like, hello. And they're like, yes. This seems like the person that I was supposed to know.
Well, there were people tagged in the game when I played that it was like, there are some people who will recognize that you're not part of their crew, right? But just not everybody knows everybody on staff.
I guess so, yeah. It's just very funny. But I was just saying, it'd be very impressive if Jak could pull it off with Daxter
And
hanging around. Like, yes, I've adopted an odd soul since we last met.
He would use it as like a beard. Built in disguise.
You're right. That makes sense.
These are sort of challenging to mash up, I think.
We say that every week.
Well, every week it's challenging.
It's a stalling statement.
Well, no, but seriously though, I think it's interesting. Like we've both of these series that, I mean, not to say certainly Hitman 3 doesn't radically reinvent the like Hitman gameplay in any way, but there's like a definite shift in developer ethos that happens there, and we see that happen in Jak even more obviously, where the gameplay really does shift. So these two series that are, in some ways, have made a point of redefining themselves. But I don't want to just make Jak the assassin. And they're both open worldy. But I don't just want Jak to be an assassin. That feels bad.
Daxter's the assassin.
Stop that. Your final mission in that game would be to assassinate Jak.
No! No, Jak's like your handler, you know?
Look, if Naughty Dog is making it, that's what it would be, okay? So...
Jak is like the tech guy, you know? He's on the cams. And Daxter's sneaking through the place with his tiny little gun.
He can be anyone.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so we just need to pitch our Jak and Daxter reboot that is lightly inspired by Hitman. Okay. They've once again... No, I can't put them in the real world. That's stupid. That's too gritty. Stop that.
Okay, the second game is all about, like, the fighting back against, like, the capitalists, right?
Yeah.
So maybe, like, you've had some sort of, like, reset again, you know? Like, there's some...
like they do to Agent 47. There's, like, a mind-clearing like a memory forgetting serum they've used on him sometimes. Your memory's been wiped.
Okay. I meant more like a story reset. I was trying to think of, like, there's some new, like, neighboring kingdom where the dark mana is gathering.
Dark eco, but okay.
The dark
continue.
eco. I'm sorry. The dark, some sort of earth-inspired
Go on. It's fine.
term
You
that
You haven't done the
RPGs
research.
use.
Go on. Keep going.
Rude. I was gonna say the Dr. Pepper first, and then I switched to dark mana, so you're welcome.
Thanks.
And all your friends who are now, like, you know, in charge or whatever are like, man, we gotta know what's happening over there with the dark eco. Jak, Daxter, you're gonna be two very different, you're gonna be two spies for us, you know? And so you've got sort of the Jak part, which is all about, like, you know, all the corporate espionage stuff.
Okay.
And you know, sometimes you have to take out targets.
Oh, okay. I like this. You're, like, building a whole, like, 007 team, and they're each gonna have, like, different missions. Is that the idea?
Yeah. Yeah, so, like, Jak is, like, the public face, you know? Like, he provides distractions, he ingratiates himself, sometimes there's, like, you know, things he has to do that are, like, stealthy or violent or whatever. And then, like, Daxter is, like, in the walls, like a rat, you know, like, slipping into places he shouldn't, gathering info. Like, more of, like, a stealth sort of,
Can we incorporate
situation.
Jack's girlfriend into the team? I'd like to give her a role.
Sure. What's her name again?
I don't remember.
Aren't there,
Kira?
like, two girls? Which one is his girlfriend?
There's a girl... I'll look it up. You can call her the girlfriend for now.
Great. The girlfriend. I don't know. What's another spy role? I guess she could be, like, the handler type thing. Like, the voice in the ear.
I wanted her to be playable, though. I really feel like... Well, I wish
Maybe
Daxter was the handler.
You could do something
but...
with, like, a computer guy, right?
Yeah.
Could make a game out of that.
Oh, she is kind of actually the like... She's, like, building stuff, at least in where I've gotten to in the game. So she could be the tech person.
Sure, yeah.
Kira. It is Kira. I was right. Yeah, she's like the gear, the gadget person.
Yeah, I'm not sure what her gameplay would be like, but I think there's definitely some spy role that she could play.
She would have to have all sorts of weird equipment. I wonder if you could send them all to tackle the mission and do, like, they would have some of their own unique missions, but then sometimes there'd be missions where it's like you could play as any of them.
That'd be cool.
But then that would mean that her dad, like the old guy, has to be the handler.
Cool.
Okay, I dig this. Like a Jak and Daxter sandbox espionage game.
Yeah.
That's fun. I don't really feel like there's a way to bring Agent 47 to the Jak and Daxter. Like, you can't just be a cyberpunk hitman.
Jak and Daxter featuring Agent 47 from the Hitman series.
They do, you know, Naughty Dog loves their little Easter eggs, so you
Sure,
never
yeah.
know.
Yeah. You open the game just by playing, like, a level from Hitman, like the Crash Bandicoot thing in Uncharted 4.
Yeah. Yeah.
That makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. No, that would be interesting. That would be interesting. I'm interested. I would like to see them reboot Jak and Daxter. Actually, I don't know if I would. I'm worried. I'm worried about how dark it would have to be if Naughty Dog was going to work on it now. It's already very dark. So I'll just keep my spy Jak and Daxter.
All right.
Well, folks, thanks for listening to another episode of Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
So it's been a fun time. Listeners, have you played Jak and Daxter or Hitman 3? Do you have thoughts on them? How have you felt when series you've loved have evolved and changed over time? Has it been a welcome change, or has it been something that you've felt compelled to tweet about? Do you have a furry animal friend that accompanies you on all of your adventures, and or a voice in your ear telling you what to do when you're out achieving things?
Would it be annoying to have, like, an animal friend that just, like, lives on you, do you think?
You tell me.
I feel like my back would start hurting.
You would have to work out the kind of aerodynamics of it all, for sure.
Yes, the aerodynamics
That's
of it all.
not really the word I was looking for, but I couldn't think of what the word was, and aerodynamics was at least a real word. So, I stuck with it.
Logistics?
I was thinking more like kinesthetics of it all.
That's a little fancy, too.
Okay, well, whatever.
The aesthetics of it all.
Not the aesthetics.
Where do they look best?
That too, that would be important
poses.
too. No, I don't know. Ask a pirate. Or so, parrot on the shoulder. Ask anyone who has a pet monkey. Surely you know some pirates and people with pet monkeys.
Yeah, lots of people in Boston. Both. At the same time.
Well, that would balance out. The problem is having just one on one shoulder. The trick would be to have 2 Daxters, each weighing you down equally on both sides. In any case, listeners, do you have an opinion about where the animal would live on you? If you have thoughts on any of that or anything else related to this episode, you should hit us up on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Talk This Podcast. You should also check out our website, www.talkthispodcast.com, where you can read all about the show, see the games that are in the hat that Emma's about to pull our next 2 games from, and read our blog, featuring long-running series Clickbait Boyfriend, who I did describe this episode as like an animal that lives with me, and Split Screen, where Emma and I are watching My Hero Academia and Coffee Prince, although soon, a new K-drama, so stick around. Let's see. Most importantly, if you like the show, you should subscribe. We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora Podcasts, online and on the app, Overcast, Pocket Cast, anywhere that you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This.
Indeed.
So is the virtual hat all queued up?
Yep.
Alright, let's see what's coming up in our next main installment.
Our old game is going to be Infamous.
But what is it? It's Infamous, but which game? I'm just kidding. Go on.
Oh, I got it. I didn't understand the logic there. I'm sorry. I understand now. I'm tired. I got it. My brain got there. And our new game is going to be Bravely Default 2.
Dope. The third one.
The third one. It's like, it's not that confusing, okay? It's like 10 to 11.
It's a little weird. The fact that they went out of their way to... We'll talk about this in 2 weeks. Never mind. I'll save it.
Bravely Default and Bravely Second are the same continuity. Bravely Default 2 is a different continuity.
It will make sense if the sequel to this one is Bravely Second 2. How about that?
I hope they do that. Makes no gosh darn sense, but I really hope they do that.
Well, you've already got a taste of what 2 weeks is going to be like, so check us out in a fortnight to hear us talk about Infamous and Bravely Default 2.
In Fortnite.
Yeah.
We also...
Like a concert, but...
This is done live in Fortnite, if you didn't know. We record this podcast.
Oh, fine. Hey, Emma, what's next week's side quest gonna be?
I don't know yet. I'm sorry, I'll think of something.
Yeah, don't roast me until you've done your job.
No, okay.
So next week it'll be a side quest of Emma's choosing, and in 2 weeks we'll be in Fortnite. Oh, man. Okay, fine. You said that. Now you get to sign off the show.
This week, I hope that Your blueberry muffins are deadly.